And then when we started jamming as a band, that's when I started to flourish, because James had already been playing for 10 years when we started, right?
Oh, wow.
So he was sort of my de facto guitar teacher. I was constantly just learning from him, and he was constantly, but a lot of times it wasn't verbal. It was just watching what he was doing. And I was like, oh, that's what that is. Oh, that's that, and then that's never really stopped. We've always sort of ever since just, bounced guitar playing off each other constantly. But that was a big thing though. I was a bit of a sink or swim moment. I had only been playing for about a year. The band started, and everybody was way more advanced than I was. But it was like, what are you gonna do? Not get good and not be in a band? That was sort of and that's all I wanted to do. At that point in my life, I realized, like, this is it. Like, this is my path, for better or for worse, or I don't know if it's gonna work or not, but. And then the band just, we started together and still together.
You burned the boats and you caught up with your guitar playing. The band formed in Burlington. When you think back to your hometown of Burlington, what thoughts come to mind, and how special was it for the band to go back and play the Burlington Sound of Music Festival? That's a big one. I've been to many times.
Yeah, you know what? That was we went back in, I think, 2002 for the first time that we had really gone back to Burlington at all on any level since, like, the Butt Monkeys. We had played Hamilton and Toronto and stuff, but we played a lot of shows as the Butt Monkeys in Burlington. Then when we became Finger 11 and we took off to the States, when we would come back to Canada, it would always be to Toronto or Montreal or Vancouver. We never came back and just played in Burlington. So when we played in 2002, that was massive. That was a massive concert. It was at the time, that was like the first year that Burlington Sound of Music went from like a local concert to like a big concert, you know what I mean? And they went from like having like maybe a couple thousand people to like, I think it was like 60,000. It was a crazy turnout. It was I think back then I might even have been free, right? Still, so it was a massive, one of the biggest crowds we've ever seen in our lives, and it was in Burlington. That was insane. That was insane because we were all like, growing up in Burlington was really a great place to grow up. But it wasn't a super cultured place. It was mostly like a sports-based kind of city. So hockey, massive hockey town. They had like the Golden Horseshoe tournament every year, and there was so there wasn't a lot of like places for people who didn't want to do sports to go. And there wasn't a lot of things to do either, right? So it slowly started. A guy named Scott Kish, who was in a band called Glee, and then Scion Spheric became that band. Like, that was where they sort of grew into after he passed away. But he was a big part of organizing and starting a local music scene by just, I think he literally went around to some bars and said, like, would you let our bands play? And no one would. And this one place in Waterdown called the Kirk House, they said yes. I don't know why they said yes.
Shout out to the Kirk House.
What's that?
Shout out to the Kirk House.
Oh yeah, man. If there was no Kirk House, there would be no Rainbow Butt Monkeys. Like, it was a massive part of our scene. So for about 6 weeks straight, every weekend, 3 bands would get together and play there. And it was awesome because there'd be like a Tool band, and there would be like a Jane's Addiction band, and we would be sort of like the Chili Pepper Pearl Jam band. And there would be like a Tragically Hip band, and they weren't all cover bands. They were just influenced by those styles. Do you know what I mean? And so and also what it did, it was created for the first time ever, it created a scene for all the guys and girls that didn't want to be in sports. You know what I mean? And they had a place to go and be with like-minded people. And it became really important for the people that were going there and for that area. But what it did for us was allowed us to just constantly be playing with other bands that were good quality, and just be making fans and just sort of get the groove going before anybody was really even watching. The only people who were paying attention were the other bands and the people in the room. We had never talked to any record labels. We had never talked to any radio stations. There was no one in the world knew this scene even exists. They still don't know it existed, but it did. And it was a big part of what made us into the band, for sure.
So I had mentioned that the last podcast guest that we had was Chuck Daly from I Mother Earth. When I let him know that you were going to be our first guest, he had some kind words that he wanted me to share with you. So this is from Chuck Daly. He says, Rick is the best, the absolute best ever, a beautiful musician and a beautiful human being, an intense writer and intense performer. Rick shares love. Rick promotes kindness. I'm so lucky to have made music, performed with, and shared countless joints across the country with this incredible dude. Thanks, Rick. I truly do love you. So that's from Chuck Daly. That might be the kindest words I've ever heard someone say to another human being. I don't even know what that feels like to receive something like that.
Yeah, I know. I mean, well, coming from Chuck, that he is, I could almost use that description for Chuck, right? You know, he is all those things as well. And but me and Chuck, yeah, we really got on well on that tour. We shared the side, like when all the bands got together to play the songs together. Me and Chuck shared that side of the stage together, and that was a lot of fun. We'd always be looking at each other, laughing and smiling, trying not to run into each other, you know. But like, yeah, no, I mean, he's an incredible man. Like, he's not just an incredible musician, but just an all around, just that kind of spirit that definitely on tour, man, is very important. You know, I'm not like, maybe he saw me on all my good points of the day, you know, but I can definitely I can get upset on tour. I can get annoyed with things, you know, and so he does it. He strikes me as Chuck. I've never seen Chuck in a bad mood. I've never actually seen Chuck not smiling, which is incredible. You know what I mean? So yeah, I love him too. I love you, Chuck.
Amazing. I have tickets for March in Ottawa, the I Mother Earth comeback show, where they have both singers. They have Edwin and Brian performing the entire discography. So I'm excited.
That's wild, man. What a cool idea. I mean, and how cool of those guys to be, you know, just adults in the whole situation. You know what I mean? Like it's great that they just are able to see the greater good and get together for the fans and for the music and sort of give, you know, the fans the ultimate experience, really. So it should be great.
It'll be awesome. There's a couple Toronto dates as well. I think the first one sold out, so they added another one. So they're going fast. And hopefully with the pandemic where they keep cutting, you know, the concerts down 50% and nothing over 1,000. And, you know, hopefully in the next few months, we go back to a new normal that's a little better. But if we dive back into the start of the Rainbow Butt Monkeys, how early on did you guys know that you had something special, or did you not know and you were just doing what you loved and you just happened to find success early?
Yeah, I think well, I think it's a bit of both. I think we were naive enough and young enough and excited enough to think we were really special. You know what I mean? Like, I think everybody thought that, but we believed in it. We thought, like, we just believed in the power of bands, right? And we knew that if the five of us get together and make music and we do it properly, it shouldn't sound like anything anybody's ever heard before, because that's the whole point of making music. So when we made the Butt Monkey record, probably more than ever in our life, there was a bit of an agenda to make something that totally didn't fit in with the Canadian music scene. Because at the time, we weren't big fans of the Canadian music scene because it was a lot more folk and alt folk country kind of stuff, you know what I mean? And we were 16-year-old kids that loved, you know, grunge music. And there wasn't, like, when we flipped on Much Music, there wasn't bands that from Canada that we were like connecting with, you know?
Canadian bands seem to have to go to the US to break, right? Which is
they did.
sad.
And well, at that time, especially because there was, and nothing against these bands, but there was like the big bands were like Spirit of the West, the Tractors, Grapes of Wrath, and they're all amazing bands. But as a 16-year-old kid who's trying to learn the electric guitar, they're not the kind of bands you want to be like, you know what I mean? So our favorite bands were all from America. And so when we made our music, it was definitely influenced by that scene, not our local scene, which in itself made us stand out from the local scene because we weren't part of anybody's scene. So that, in that sense, we definitely felt like we were doing something right because people were reacting to it. But I wouldn't say, but it all happened fast too for us, right? We went from like making our demos to being signed really fast. So once we got signed and Circles came out and went on Much Music and it went number one on rock radio in Canada, like, I don't think we realized how special that was in the moment. I think we honestly thought that's just how it works, right? Like and again, just because of our own naive belief system, like we're like, okay, that's what you do. You make a band, you write a song, you put it out, people like it. Like it wasn't, there wasn't this feeling of like, yeah, we did it. It was more like, okay, cool, let's keep doing this. And now in hindsight, obviously I know how special that was and how immediate it was. But at the time, it sounds weird, but it just sort of made sense to us because that's what we wanted to do. You know what I mean?
So how does a young band from Burlington that is playing very unique music catch the attention of a major label like Mercury that signed you guys and released your first album? Where do those dots connect?
It's simple, man. 97.7 Rock Search. The 97.7 Rock Search. I think it was the 94 or 93. Might be 93. Anyways, so that was crazy because we had just only made 2 songs and one of them was Circles. So we entered it into the Rock Search. It got picked as a finalist. But the bands we were against at the time were all bands that we knew from the local scene, and they were all older and more established in the local scene. So we were pretty intimidated. And then we went, we get picked as a finalist, and we all went for dinner, all the bands, and we picked a number out of a hat to get the order, and that's where I think that's where like luck was on our side that day because we picked the number and we got to go last, and that really played in our favor because like any concert, like the first band, there was not a lot of people there, everybody was sober, so no matter how good they were, it just doesn't come across, right? And then by the time we went on, everybody was hammered and everybody's in a great place. And we came out and we're like these young kids and we're jumping around and we're going nuts. And then we ended the whole night with Shamrocks and shenanigans. And the place was crazy. It was like it was a Rainbow Butt Monkey. You know what I mean? But you almost forgot it was a competition still. But by the end of the night, it was just, we had made all these fans in the room. And the crazy thing about it is that now you look back, the judge panel was like 6 A&R guys from different labels. Like it was a total show. Like it was like a showcase. It wasn't to try and win the champion. Like it was like, that was I think the winning prize was like 10 grand in like recording time, but really the grand prize was playing for 6 labels.
Wow.
So we went in on Thursday or Friday, no one from any record label knowing who we were. And on Monday, we're getting like literally 4 offers from all the majors in Canada. We don't even have a manager. We didn't have an agent or a manager or anything. We just had the band, and so it just sort of came out of nowhere and it happened so fast. And then, so that's sort of where, like, if 97.7, no question, was the reason that we got discovered. I mean, it might have happened in another way somewhere down the road, but winning that Rock Search or even being part of that Rock Search was a massive catalyst for the entire career. So.
And what was it like to have the success of singles like Circles and As Far As I Can Spit right out of the gate? Like first single goes to number 1 on rock radio, like you mentioned.
Wow.
What is the feeling? I mean, it felt great to win the competition. It felt great to get signed, but to hear that song on the radio and hear it a lot and have a fan base that's growing, what did that mean to you as the first taste of success?
Well, a couple things. We were still in high school, right?
That's so crazy.
So we literally went back to high school after winning the competition.
Were you high school
and
heroes?
That was, like in our own way. If we weren't heroes, we were definitely like getting stared at more in the hallways and stuff. You know what I mean? Like we definitely had got the attention of everybody at this point, even people didn't, and loving support and attention, like no jealousy, no like anger, no, like everybody was just like, right on, guys. Like we were part of the community and they were rooting for us, and they always did. They never stopped rooting for us. Burlington sort of always had our back, like, and so that was crazy, right? Because like we were kids still. Like, we weren't legally old enough to drink, and we all came to school with a massive hangover that day because we were in the VIP section drinking champagne all night. So, but it got it was it was it was noticeably different, I guess is the best way I can put it, from between me and my friends. And just obviously, how it is. There was no financial change in our lives, right? Like, you don't make money from being in a band, especially in Canada with one single. So there wasn't like that kind of change, but notoriety and just like silly things like Burlington had a massive bar scene, right? Like there was bars everywhere, and it was the thing to do. Cheap pitcher night at Emma's, or cheap, cocktail night somewhere. And everybody had fake ID. Everybody would get in, and the lineups were like 2 hours long. Like, it was crazy, right? Like, you wouldn't go some days because it's like, oh shit, look at the lineup. And I started getting to skip the lineup. You know what I mean? Like, that was one of the
That's
first.
the
like,
true VIP experience of being in a successful
like, I'm
band.
young, like I'm not even old enough to drink in the bar. Most of the people in the line know this about me. Most of the bouncers probably even knew it. But meanwhile, I'm getting to go to the front of the line, like, with as many friends as I wanted to bring in. You know what I mean? And go right in and go right to the bar and get free drinks. And like, that kind of lifestyle started early. And those kind of perks, you want to call them, they started early. And that was like, oh, I can get used to this. So that was about it, though.
So your very first album comes out, you're still in high school, and you get your first Juno Award nomination. So for the listeners here from the States, the Junos are the equivalent of the Grammys. So what did it mean to have your country recognize your talents that first time?
That was wild. I mean, no question. Like, again,
that was like breakthrough artist or best new artist or something like that.
Yeah. And again, there was a little bit of that. Of course, like, this is how it goes. Like, we were so excited to be doing it. We just thought this was, I can honestly say, I think we thought this was the typical musical experience. Like, once you get signed, then you get a single on the radio, and then you go to the award shows. Like, I just think that's what we thought all bands did. And because it was happening to us, like, why would we think anything different? Because we didn't think we were special. We just thought this is how the band ride goes. You know what I mean? So, but that Junos I'll never forget, because we had to get dressed up, which in butt monkey terms is not really a thing, but we were basically different clothes than our stage clothes. And but what the coolest thing about that was we were signed to the same label as Shania Twain, and that was Shania Twain's big year. Like, she was the massive star globally, and she was gonna win a bunch of awards that night. But the day of the Junos, she came down with like a flu or something, and like, she was in town in the hotel, but she had to cancel because she just couldn't keep, she was sick, right? So we got her seats.
Wow.
So if it's funny, like, we're in the front row, like where all the camera pans by, right? Because that's where they have all those A-list celebrities. But because Shania Twain couldn't make it and Mercury had bought tickets, we were the only other band there. They gave it to the Butt Monkeys. So it's like, it's all this like Canadian rock royalty and these 5 unknown teenagers that are dressed like pretty wacky. And it was fun, man. I mean, everyone was so friendly, and just like, everybody's always been so open to the band. I don't know if it's just because we disarmed a lot of people with the name Rainbow Butt Monkeys, whatever it was. People just always sort of invited us to the party. So
the name had an effect, like the Bare Naked Ladies, where people, it caught the attention, and then they got to check out the music. I remember Shania Twain hosting the Juno several years later, and she had this skit where she was going through the crowd, and she walked by the Swollen Members, the rap group from Vancouver, and she walks by them, and she pretends to fall on them and catches herself. And I remember her saying, "Oh my God, I almost fell on a swollen member." So I remember that was a moment that stood out. Shania, you dirty girl.
That's pretty funny, man.